Once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will always have a live chat on the first Friday of the month at 8 p.m. So please subscribe, click on the bell, and let's get 1,000 subscribers very soon. Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Eastern Rome fell instead of Western Rome. I made many scenarios involving Rome, so I won't go into historical details about the historical context and what happened. If you wish to know more about the historical context, feel free to check the videos down below and also my other alternate histories that involved Rome. I have some that were made, for instance, about Western Rome, brought back by Syagrius or his descendants, a Western Rome that survives on its own, another one where Rome conquered Germania, and another one where just Rome is forever in there. This video will be a very different one. I will try to change the position of Western and Eastern Rome. Of course, I'm not talking about the geographical position. In this timeline, we will have Eastern Rome who will suffer huge defeats and more problems than Western Rome. And thus Western Rome would be able to hold its own. And I will start with one point of divergence, and that would be where all the invasions would start to go towards Eastern Rome. In OTL this was the case, but in the eastern part of Rome they always had a successful defense against the barbarian invasions. In this video I won't make a huge topic where I will discuss how Western Rome would survive, because this is not a video about it, but how Eastern Rome could fall. After the Battle of Adrianople, or Adrianopolis, it is said that the Visigoths tried to take the city. They tried to take it and annex it and live in there. Although the Visigoths won the battle, they were not really able to totally take over the city of Adrianople. Moreover, there has been confusing accounts whether Tracia and other parts of Eastern Rome have been given to the Visigoths, who were at this time a foederati. So instead of not being able to take over Adrianopolis, the Visigoths would settle in there and take it for real over. Some smaller invasions would be attempted by other tribes and also in Western Rome, and later on also the Visigoths, they would then experience and also know about richer lands that were in the other parts of Byzantium or Eastern Rome, and thus they would then also settle from Adrianopolis towards other parts, which I will discuss later on. More Germanic tribes would come to Eastern Rome, and Eastern Rome would be one that is split amongst the barbarians. Instead of a Romulus Augustulus, we could have a Justinianus or Justinianus, for instance, and he would be an alternate last emperor of Eastern Rome. Well, of course, this is impossible to say who would be the last emperor of Eastern Rome, because if we take all the Germanic invasions, it's possible that one or more emperors in there would die in a battle, or they would just be replaced by other ones who would have more intrigue, so it's difficult to say. While Western Rome, they would be able to defend itself, and they would have a good area with the Alps, with the Danube, the Rhine, and Eastern Rome, they would diminish in power. In around an alternate 6th century, we would now have a divided former Eastern Rome between different barbarian nations. Let's say the Vandals, they get Egypt, while the Visigoths would then continue and take parts of Sinai, Judea and Syria. The Suebi would be bordering the Sassanid Empire, and the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths would get most of Turkey. the Burgundians would have parts of Greece, and the Franks would not have a kingdom in this timeline, as they were too far and one of the earliest group that had contact with Rome of all of these Germanic tribes. No one would have, or no one would be a good replacement for them, but let's say that another Germanic tribe that was close to the Swabian Burgundians would then suddenly also start to make an invasion, and they would also establish a kingdom around Bulgaria. We would take the Havalis, for instance. Of course, all of this is highly speculative, but if we take the date of the invasion of each tribe into consideration, also the distance they went, this would be a very likely division in this scenario. The Alemanis would be an exception. They would take Germania Superior of Western Rome, but this would give Western Rome actually much later on better borders, because they would have less land borders to defend. Now, you would also have a few successor states of Eastern Rome, and these successor states, they could for instance live in Cyprus, even Crimea and some Greek islands, and for sure in Crete. Now you can imagine how the Sassanids would react to this, right? Well, for one, I think the Vandals and the Suebi and the Visigoths will most likely be gobbled up by the Sassanids. Moreover, the Sassanids would probably keep other kingdoms alive, as they would not pose any threat to them, and they would also be preoccupied with their own internal issues. Another consequence will be that the Arabs will have a much harder time to conquer all the areas that they conquered in OTL, but I believe that conquering Sinai, Egypt won't be that difficult, but going further until Carthage probably will pose huge problems for the Arabs, as they would also have the Sassanids on their back, waiting for a wrong move of the Arabs, and now we have Western Rome fully stable, would have very loyal subjects and soldiers defending an untouched Carthage against the Arabs. You also have to keep in mind that during all these invasions, much of Western Rome was destroyed. You had the depopulation of Italy. And in this scenario, we will not have something like this. So many cities, they will still flourish in Western Rome. Many cities will still have a huge population, or well, a bigger population than in OTL. And we will also have much better defenses against potential invaders. The Slavs, they would take over Bulgaria and other parts of the Balkans, while the Ostrogoths, the Burgundians, and other smaller kingdoms and Eastern Roman successor states would get stronger over the years and more stable. The Sassanids were occupied with the Arabs. There was no other threat except perhaps the occasional Slavic invasion, but besides that, all of these successor kingdoms, be it Barbarian, Slavic, or truly Eastern Roman successors, they were quiet. The Slavs, they could now march until Germania, which would be a no man's land, and much of Germania, the Balkans, and even Pannonia would be Slavic. The Vikings will not be butterflied away, and they would cause a lot of problems for the Western Romans. Western Rome will lose control over Britain for sure, but also over the lowlands and the Rhine as well. This could lead to a chain reaction where the Slavs could occasionally invade some parts of the borders as well as the Vikings, but the Western Roman heartlands, they would be untouched. After some years, Britain and Ireland will fall to the Scandinavian sphere of influence, with a Celtic Viking Ireland and a Romanized Celtic Viking Britain. The Netherlands would also have a very strong Germanic influence from the Frisians, Franks, and now from the Vikings as well, but also a very strong Latin influence with the longer annexation or the longer time where they were part of Western Rome. Greek would still continue to be the lingua franca in former Eastern Rome, but Greek would be challenged by Persian and even Arabic. Arabic and Persian would change the position depending on who would be stronger or not, but I predict that both worlds, the Arabic and the Persian world would have a similar relation as Byzantium and the Sassanid Empire. At one point, a Germanic kingdom might take the risk and strike or against the Arabs or against the Sassanids. Perhaps Western Rome could be interested to take Egypt, as it would be a very needed province. Egypt was known as a breadbasket, and Western Rome with cities that were untouched from invasions and with growing population everywhere, they would need a province like that. As a matter of fact, this Ostrogothic kingdom could be counted as a centralized state because there would be no feudalization or feudalism, and thus we would not see something as the Holy Roman Empire. I can't predict whether the Ostrogothic kingdom would see itself as a successor of Eastern Rome, but Western Rome would have a strong interest in such an idea. It would give them an ally in the east and someone who would probably help them to keep control in the Mediterranean, which would have occasionally be endangered by Arabs, pirates and Persians. The smaller Greek Eastern Roman successor states would fall out of favor from Western Rome because they would be too weak allies, and at some point only Crete might be able to survive due to their favorable geography. Fast forward, the Mongols would destroy the Sassanid Empire in this timeline, as well as most of Eastern Europe, and this would be the chance for the Ostrogoths or the Arabs to shine or fill a gap that is now left in there. But with Western Rome as an ally, the Ostrogothic kingdom would have a good chance to do so, while the Burgundians and other Germanic kingdoms of the Balkan region would still fight against Bulgarians, other Slavic kingdoms, populations that were pushed by the Mongols, and many other foes. Western Rome would be left untouched from the Mongols and just worry about Britain or the Arabs. Western Rome would set up different trade posts in Western Africa, have a monopoly in the trans-Saharan trade routes, enjoy good relations with Mali, and even set colonies in the Canary Islands, Madeira and the Azores, while Britain or the Scandinavians would set up colonies in the Americas. I also predict that much of Western Africa would be influenced more by Christianity than Islam, and thus we will also have a more Christianized Africa overall. At this point, it is impossible to predict what might happen next, but a few things would be sure. The former Eastern Roman territory would be unrecognizable with Germanic and Slavic influences. The Sassanids would become very overpowered for a long time. The Arabs would not easily conquer everything and have a constant fight with the Sassanids. Once the Sassanids would fall, the Arabs, or the biggest barbarian kingdom within the former Eastern Rome, could become the greatest power in the Middle East. Western Rome would have few problems besides the Vikings and the Arabs if they chose to invade Egypt. Latin would be more spoken in this world, and we might see further developments in some areas, but also some stagnation in other areas. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.